is Ruel's Running Podcast, a podcast about running, health, family, play, and an NSNG lifestyle. And now, here's your host, Ruel.
Excuse me as I rock on. That's Went Away by Dorothy Lane. Dorothy Lane out of Martinez, California. That's out of the Cut and Dry album. Check them out at DorothyLaneMusic.com. Yeah. Hello, welcome to Ruel's Running Podcast. I'm Ruel Abadam, your host. It's been a while. It's been quite a while. Most of the time I think I've forgotten that I had a podcast. And times that I remembered, I was concerned about how I was going to get right back into it. And had thought about things like, what do I want to say? What do I want to avoid saying? How can I restructure, how things are? But reality, the podcast isn't really going to have a format, and it's just going to be it's going to be however it ends up being. Train of what do you call it, random thoughts, spur of the moment, improv, ad hoc, sort of exploratory discussion. I don't know how you want to put it, but it's going to be what it ends up being. I'll try to insert some sort of structure. I have in the past, but I'm not going to put a whole lot of post-production, editing type stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm going to figure out a different intro, just change things up, and go from there. So I've had numerous false starts trying to get back into the swing of recording, and I'm over it. So here we go. Welcome to Ruel's Running Podcast, and if you are a return listener, I can't believe you're still here. Thanks for keeping the podcast around, and I apologize it's taken so long. A lot's happened, and I may mention once in a while here and there, some things that might have caused or things that have been experienced in that break. And it'll be fun. If you are a new listener, welcome. You're going to be wondering what this is all about and what kind of running information you can get. And this podcast isn't dedicated solely to running. It's not a how-to. It's not a running report of any particular running community. Once in a while, I may talk about a running experience or a running event I participated in. They're scattered around the old episodes, and as regularly as possible, I try to sort of at least capture what bit of running I had done and or what I plan to do, and that's pretty much it. Running has been sort of massaged. The word has been massaged to sort of mean more than just the literal putting one foot in front of the other, but it's also meant sort of running as far as moving on, moving forward in life, in your life and in the world, progressing, doing what you need to do. Nothing about this podcast is evergreen, so it will capture a moment in time, and I rarely will ever repurpose an episode just for the sake of putting out an episode. And early on, I would have done that and called them re-up episodes. It's kind of dumb. It's just a waste. And back then, it was a time in my podcasting where I felt like, I need to keep things going, otherwise I'm going to lose an audience. But I don't really have that much control. And to be honest, the folks that do tune in, they're folks that I have direct contact with. So I hear from them after I put out an episode, or they've tuned into an episode, and they sort of, make reference to things that I may have said or that I've said. So, and that's always fun. Yeah. And, and that's fine. I've, in the past, used these podcast episodes as a form of therapy, because for me, it helps putting my thoughts out and doing something with those thoughts that I've put out. I'll transfer them from one hard drive to the next and upload them to a different drive. So it's funny when you can take your thoughts and move them around, whether digitally or, on hard copy. Like if you journal, if you handwrite a journal entry, you're transferring your thoughts into something physical, and then you maybe close the journal and you put it on a shelf or on your bedside, wherever you store a physical journal. You're moving your thoughts from onto a physical medium and being able to hold it and move it and shift it, and same thing. And there's something cool about that process. Yeah, and when you hear background noise, a lot of background noise, a lot of sort of white noise, it's a good chance I'm driving. And a lot of that's happened in the last several past episodes. I'll re-listen once in a while and think, God, they could stand to be improved. So, work in progress. I think the most important thing is that you can hear me and that I've sort of adjusted the volumes in the recording well enough. By the time I upload it, it's okay. I'm not going to win any awards. Yeah. So how's it going? Yeah. Same. In the spirit of the last few episodes, I'll just touch on some topics. One, what's cooking? The most recent thing that I've prepared, one second, is the most recent thing I prepared is fresh mango. Not for me. My wife's a big mango lover, so she'll buy boxes of mangoes, fresh mangoes, and she likes to eat them currently cut up into chunks in a bowl and adding frozen blueberries and then drizzling heavy cream over over the fruit, and that's what she likes. And that's the last thing I prepared. The last thing I prepared for myself. What is it? It's about 6:30 in the afternoon, and I've snacked on a few macadamia nuts and a dill pickle spear, and had coffee at different parts of the day. So I haven't really sat down and had a meal. And if I were to go back to the previous evening, I did have a nice bowl of frozen berries with macadamia nuts and heavy cream. I've also been adding some honey to that, some salt, a little bit of olive oil, and you're thinking, olive oil? Or surprisingly, the fattiness of the heavy cream, the fattiness and the luxuriousness of the olive oil, with a little bit of that, with the sweetness that comes from the honey and the sweetness of the natural sweetness of the fruit, then you kind of throw in some of the saltiness with the sea salt. There's something awesome about that whole combination of flavors that work well. Yeah, so that's not so much cooking, but it's food related, and that's kind of the most recent thing that's been going on with food. Now, speaking of coffee, I've been making espressos. Well, I'll put it this way: I'll start the day with a Keurig coffee. Okay, and that's the plastic pot of coffee grounds, and you stick it in some machine, and you allow it to drip coffee in your cup. And I'll kind of do that because it's the easiest thing to do right when I'm getting up. And I'll finish that mug, and then I don't know, maybe an hour later, when that first mug is done, I'll prepare more coffee, and I'll do a double espresso, and I'll get those 2 shots into a mug, and I'll run the double shot setting again on the espresso machine without swapping out the puck or the espresso grounds. I'll just kind of repurpose that first set. So I'll hit the espresso grounds a couple times, and then I'll swap out the grounds. I'll repack a new double set, and then I'll run that. So it's kind of like I'm doing basically a quad, and there's a 5th and a 6th, but it's over previously run set of grounds. I call them pucks, espresso pucks. So, it's kind of like 6, but it's not. It's like more like a quad and a half or a 5. A 5er. Yeah. And I'll throw in a splash of heavy cream and I'm good. Anyways, done with coffee, done with food. What are we? We're at it's towards the tail end of August, and I've had this goal for several years about completing a 50-mile distance, and I've had like 3 failed attempts at the distance, and they're not races, they're not events, they're just sort of my own solo effort, my own solo runs, personal runs. And it's been a few years since I've attempted, and I haven't been doing as much running lately. But in the next couple of days, I will. 2-3 days, I will be going out and giving myself at least 12 hours of time on my feet. And if I can cover 50, I would have hit my goal. But let's say I'm mostly there and I need another hour. I need to go into the 13th hour to do it. Then I'll do that. So, not so much trained, but, it's still a goal. And, if anything, it'll be a sort of what are those spiritual walks, if you will. It'll be one of those. It'll be the day where I kind of dedicate my time on my feet, and whether it's too cold when it's dark and when it's too hot when it's daylight, I'll cope, and it'll be magical. So when that happens, I'll report back. I'm not gonna lie. I keep reflecting back on the past failures and telling myself, how can I pull it off this time around? Especially given I've had so much time has passed since I was my most fittest. But yeah, just there's another part of me that's just like, whatever, you're just gonna go out and go. So that's what I'll do. Yeah, sorry, if you're a new listener, and you might be thinking that I must have misspoken, said 50 miles, or I misspoke and said 12, 13 hours. And no, that's what I said. And I say it very easily, but know that it's not an easy thing to do. That's the word. Pilgrimage is the word. I'm gonna embark on a pilgrimage, and it isn't to a particular physical, geographical place, but it will cover a span in time, and if the end result covers the distance that was or is my goal, fantastic. Is it going to be hard? I'm counting on it. Will I try my best to go through it in a way that is tolerable? Absolutely. Am I going to kill myself? I sure hope not. And if you're curious, how does one do that? I first want to say, from where I sit, I have friends and know people who cover the distance in a way, from my viewing point, comes across as they are able to cover the distance very easy. And that is a place in my experience and abilities that I hope to get to, even at my age. I'm at that age. Right? God forbid people that I work with catch on and listen to this, but I'm not young. I sound like a child, but I'm not a child. Um, you know, back in 2011, when I started trying to identify as a runner, I did the 2011 San Francisco Marathon, and I bonked pretty hard. Not so hard that I wasn't able to finish, but so hard that it took longer than I wanted to, And I bonked so hard that I couldn't speak. I bonked so hard, and it was at the typical mile 18, right? When I saw family rooting for me, and all I could vocalize was mumbling, kind of like what I'm doing now, mumbling. And when I crossed that finish line, I was absolutely happy, but I was totally spent. I couldn't do the most basic thing like go to the car and put on a fresh shirt and put stuff away in the vehicle. It was, well, I could. It just took so damn long, and I was just so exhausted. So back now it's 2011, and when I ran, right before I ran that event, I told myself, I'm going to run this event, and I'm going to run the 26.2, and I'm going to use it as training miles, because what I really want to do is a 50K. I want to do a 31 miler, right? So not even having proven that I could cover the 26.2 mile distance, I was already planning on covering at a later time more distance. Yeah. And then when I did the 31, I think a year later, I told myself that I would use that as a training run so that I could cover a 50 distance. So it's and that's a long time ago. Right? I've ran numerous other 50K events and 50K distances and failed 50-miler attempts. That's why I've gone like as high up as 41 miles, I think. Yeah. But still got work to do. So yeah. That's what I have coming up ahead. For the past however many years I've been on, this podcast has been on hiatus. I've gone through a lot psychologically, mentally, physically. I'm a few months ago, I had problems with my back again, and I've had to get that taken care of and take care of myself and do certain exercises to sort of keep me level as far as my health. So like right now, I still feel some back discomfort, but I'm mostly functioning, right? And I think that's just how I'm going to be the rest of my life. It's just part of how my body's sort of changed, right? So, which is what it is. And if you must know, I'm 50. And back when I ran my first marathon and then 50K, around that time, I told myself I'd love to be able to cover 50 miles by the time I'm 50. And I'm 50 now. And when I'm done being 50, I would not have covered the 50-mile distance. But shortly after, the day after I become 51 is when I make the attempt. So I'll be a day or so late, and if I succeed, then better late than never. And that's that. So, thanks for listening. That's all I have for now. I'll try to keep these going, but appreciate the time. If anything, good job, Ruel, getting a recording out after all this time. Anyways, thanks, guys. Take care. And go out and run something. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ruel's Running Podcast with Ruel. If you like what you just heard, share it with your friends and your enemies. Also, be sure to check out the site over at ruelsrunning.com. This has been another Coffee with Heavy Cream production. Join us next time for another silly show of Ruel's Running Podcast.